Hi everyone! In this video I'm going to show you how I made these adorable no-show socks with infusible ink. In the description under this video you can find a link to my Facebook group, and that's where I share my design space projects. Come join the fun. So we're starting this video in Design Space because there's a few things I wanted to show you about this file that I'm sharing. So one of the first things I'd like you to see, let's move this to the front, is this cut for a jig. If you're buying no-show socks, the ones that I purchase are from Crafty Corners Blanks. I'll put a link under this video. I'm not an affiliate for this supplier, but I love her products, so I want to give you the link for them in case you want to take a look at her site. A few people have asked, what is a jig? A jig is a form that you have inside the sock. The socks that I purchase from Crafty Corners Blanks come with their own jig, but I know that not all no-show socks have the jigs included. So I thought I would add this cut to the file in case you need it. If you don't need it, I wouldn't delete it. I just hide it in the layers panel in case you need it in the future. I mentioned on the cut that you'd want to cut it from cardboard or poster board, anything harder than cardstock. I think that if you use cardstock, it will just curl inside the sock and it won't hold your sock flat as you need it to be when you press it. So cardboard, perhaps poster board, maybe 2 layers of poster board, or even something like cereal box, something stiffer like that should work. So that is the cut for the jig. By the way, everything in this file is sized for a ladies no-show sock. So the length is 8.5. I would advise that you measure your socks. I found that I had ladies size, and 8.5 was a perfect, 8.5 long, 3.5 wide was a perfect fit for the ladies socks. The no-show socks that I have at the moment that I'm going to use in this demo are larger. They fit size 8 to 10. So I'm going to need to resize the file, and I'll show you how I do that. So we're not going to use the jig right now, so I'm just going to hide it in my layers panel. We'll put aside this demo piece. I can show you how to use this demo piece if you want to use sublimation instead of infusible ink. So these are the 2 layers we're going to use with infusible ink. I've done red and black so that you can see the obvious difference. This red you can change to any color that you like. It really doesn't matter because the color will be determined by the infusible ink sheet. So no matter what color you put it, it will cut whatever sheet you use in your machine. The black layer, I'm going to turn it white for a moment so you can see the pattern. This will be the overlay on the red. You can move in either direction, layer in either direction, whichever is more comfortable for you. I found it easier to move this layer onto this layer because I didn't have to move all these little dots and put them in place. So we'll put this back to black. These are the layers that I'm going to be using. So I'll show you how I'm going to resize them for the socks that I'm using today. I'm going to ungroup. I won't detach because I don't want anything to move around. I'll X one away. 3.5 inches wide fits perfectly on the socks that I'm using today, but this 8.5 is too short. So I'm just going to unlock it and I'm going to change the length only to 9.5. Once that's done, I'm going to duplicate it, and I have 2. I'll do the same, ungroup, don't detach anything, X one away, again we'll unlock, I'll keep the 3.5 wide, and I'll change to 9.5 in my length. I'll duplicate it, and now I have all the pieces that I need. Before we move on to the demo layer, I wanted you to notice that in your layers panel, you're going to see 2 layers for the background. That's not a mistake. I wanted the double layer on the background so that when you're cutting your infusible ink, that shape will cut right through the carrier sheet. We want that, and you'll see more when I do the actual sock demo. That will keep the shape and make it easier to place on your sock. If you don't have that double layer cutting right through the carrier sheet, you would need to cut the shape out by hand, which will be a little more difficult. So for now, I'm just going to group these and hide. I'll group these 2 and hide just to get them off the screen, because I'd like to show you how you can use this demo layer for sublimation. So I'm going to ungroup it and move this aside. This layer should be ungrouped again. If you were to select all, right click and flatten, you would be able to print and cut this layer, and of course it would print blue. Let's unflatten it. I'm going to ungroup it. I'll select just the blue layer on my layers panel, click on the color, go to pattern fill, and you can upload a pattern or use a pattern that's available in Design Space, whatever you prefer. Let's choose this one. It's taking a second to install the pattern, and you can see it there. I see this line across it, so we might have to go to Edit Pattern, and we might have to do some adjustment. I still have the lines there, but I wanted to show you how you would make the adjustment. Once I had my pattern exactly how I want it, I would select all together, right click, and flatten. And to make a pair, I would duplicate. Click Make It. Click on the mat. Done. We'll ignore that black layer. That's just my text that I had on my screen. And you can see how these are going to print for sublimation. So we'll cancel that. I'm going to backtrack to put this back the way it was in the file. There we go. We'll group it. And there's the file. I'm going to hide that because I'm not going to be doing sublimation in this demo. We'll unclick the red layer and the black layer. So I'm all set to cut this out with infusible ink. I'm going to get all set up, and I'll be back to show you how I do the layering. And we're back. So I wanted to show you exactly what I meant when I said that I doubled up the background on this cut. It was so that you would cut right through the infusible ink carrier sheet so that you keep the shape. If you're doing the sublimation version, you can still put your print and cut on your Maker or Explorer and have the shape cut out, or if you prefer, you can just cut it out by hand, whichever is more practical for you. So we'll just put this aside. So I've already layered one of the sock templates. The last time that I did them, I found that it was a lot easier to move the colored portion onto the black because you didn't have to move all these little tiny dots. So I tried it again, and yes, that's how I prefer to do it. But you can do it either way. You can move the black to the color or the color to the black, whichever is more practical for you, whichever you find easiest. So we're just going to crack our sheet a little. I'm going to take off the parts I don't need so that I don't move the wrong thing by accident. I'll just tear it away. We'll move that away. We don't need that. And we don't need these little stripes. I'm just getting rid of what I don't need so that I make sure I move everything I do need. I don't want to miss anything. I don't need this little square. And I don't need the part that gives the effect that you have laces, because the white will show through like that. So this is all the colored part that I need. Okay, so now we're going to take off what we don't need on the black part, which is this long piece. We'll set that aside. And we also don't need this outside edge. So we'll take that out. Throw it away. And the little diamonds and stars we'll take out. I find that it's takes a little finicking to move the pattern, because you want to line up your dots and your, ooh, I lost a dot. Oh, there it is. It can happen. And worst comes to worst, you can always use a little punch to cut out another dot if you lose one. Not the end of the world. We'll try and line it up. I may have to move it when I move my colored portion over. Okay, so as I was going to say, it's a little tedious putting them together. It is, of course, easier if you're using sublimation, because it's just a print. You don't have to move anything. But if you don't have a sublimation printer and you want to make these socks, you can do it. It just takes a little bit of patience. I found the easiest way is to line up the dots first. We'll give that a try. Get them as accurate as possible. But if you're a little off, you don't want to worry about that either, because you can just take a little pair of tweezers and move the dots if you need to. Like this one, I didn't get very well, so I'm just going to pick it up and move it into place. This one too. Anything that's not in place where it should be, you can just pick it up and move it. There we go. That looks better. I'll move this one. Usually I'm a little more accurate, but I'm doing it more quickly, so I'm off. No big deal. Just move them. And that one could move a little. Okay, they look fine. That looks fine. You can see my dots. I laid down this square a little crooked. I'm just going to pick it up and move it. And we'll line it up better. So if it's a little crooked when you place it, don't fret about it. You can always just move it. And I find it easier to move the little elements rather than pull everything apart and move everything. And we have to move these little diamonds that go in the center. There we go, kind of center them up. But once again, don't fret. You can move whatever isn't perfect. Place this one. I will just place them all And then I'll go back and check if they're centered. These center ones, these middle ones are a little larger, so I don't need my tweezers to move those. And we'll move this one. It's really quite easy. The first one you do, you might struggle a little bit, which is normal. But after you've done one, you'll find it's easier to do more. There we go. And the last one is tiny, so I'll use my tweezer again and try not to drop it. There we go. That looks pretty good. Just set that aside. You can keep these if you want to. If you think you might use them for another sock pattern or something like that, you can keep them. That looks pretty good. We have our pair. I'm just going to line them up on here and see how they fit. And it looks like they're going to be a perfect fit. These are quite large, these no-show socks. I don't remember if I mentioned it. They're from Crafty Corners Blanks. I'll put a link under the video. I'm not an affiliate for that company, but in case you want to check out her stock, it's really nice. And you can find it at the link I'll put under the video. So these are going to fit really nice. So I'm going to get all set up to press these. And I'll be back and we'll press them together. So here we are ready to press. I did one in advance to make sure my size was good as I measured it. I think it turned out really cute. And this is just a little piece of cardstock that I put inside the sock to make sure I wouldn't have ink all over my jig. I find that it looks nicer if you're gifting them if you don't have ink all over your jig. And also if you're only cutting one jig and you want to reuse it, you don't want ink on it. So I cut a little piece of cardstock and put it inside the sock. It's worth it. So let's set up for this second sock. You want to cover your mat. You don't want to take any chances on getting ink on your mat and ruining your mat. So I'm just going to place my easy press is ready. I'm just going to place my cardstock inside the sock to protect my jig again. That looks good. I'll just give it a quick press for a few seconds to make sure that it's flat. That's perfect. And as always, I use a lint roller before I use sublimation or infusible ink. Make sure your sock is straight on your jig. If you need to make any adjustments, do it now. That looks perfect. I'll let it cool a little bit because I don't want my ink to transfer before I'm ready. And we'll set up our template. Maybe a little higher. That looks good. And because you have the adhesive back from the infusible ink sheet, you don't really need tape, but I prefer to add a little just to make sure nothing moves, because it can move and that would ruin your sock. So I just put a little piece at the top and the bottom to make sure it doesn't. And because you have this carrier sheet already on the infusible ink, you don't really need to cover it with anything, but I always do. Just out of precaution, I want to make sure that there's no chance at all of any bleed going through onto the base of my Easy Press. I'm using my 12 by 10. It is heavy. We'll just put it straight down and start the timer. And you really don't need a lot of pressure. I've seen some people say, oh, you have to press too hard and you have to lean on it and all kinds of things like that, but you really don't. It's heavy enough, and because it heats so evenly, the entire plate is heated. It doesn't take a huge amount of pressure for your transfer. I'm doing 400 degrees for 60 seconds. I can see the fumes, so I don't want to inhale. Almost there, and we're done. Just pick it up and move it away. Take off my butcher paper, and hopefully I haven't caused any ghosting. We should wait for it to cool before we start moving everything, but I never wait. There's our template. Some little pieces fell off. We'll just move those away. And you can see how cute it turned out. Isn't that terrific? So now I'll take out my little cardstock. You see the ink that transferred onto it, and my jig is nice and clean. So there we go, all done. I hope you're going to enjoy this file that I'm sharing, whether you're doing infusible ink or sublimation for no-show socks. I think you can have lots of fun with it. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please take a moment to like it and subscribe to my YouTube channel.